This content is for kids.
It's not for kids.
Isn't that what I said?
No, it's not for kids. If you are 13 years or younger, this is not for you. Do I have to kill somebody in order to actually make that point across?
No, man, you don't have to kill
Wait
no
a
one.
second.
Oh, no.
We return to our planet. The High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. I'd buy that for $1.
Wait, watch it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Anime Anticlimax. This one is a special Halloween episode.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't go live this time necessarily because I want this one to debut on Halloween, where we will, which is a very appropriate one as we are covering Hellsing Ultimate. Matter of fact, we planned this about a year in advance. We were talking about this a while. So, yes, this needs to be the October one.
Mm-hmm.
So we're finally there, and we're going to talk about everybody's favorite vampire hunters and vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And this lovely little romantic comedy romp. Maybe a little bit of slice of life there. As we go.
Definitely a lot of slicing.
So we'll talk about some first impressions here. So, Jake, is this your first time actually watching Hellsing Ultimate all the way through?
Watching Hellsing Ultimate, yes, it is. I have long since seen Hellsing. It is a series that many a person cut their teeth on with anime, or at least watched early on, and I definitely have enjoyed it. I've flirted with the idea of the manga for years, and I've flirted with the idea of watching this for years, and just never got around to it for this, that, or the other reason. Partly because it has a reputation that precedes it for being gloriously over the top in terms of the blood and guts and all that stuff. And that's not usually my cup of tea, but I was still curious about it. And I'm glad I finally had an excuse to watch it. I actually ordered a copy for this, and I was able to get the English dub knocked out. I have not yet seen this in Japanese, but I saw the original in Japanese, and they have the same voice actors, so I pretty much know what they sound like, except for the new ones, which there are a lot of new characters in this version. Basically, my first impression is that it starts off like you're watching the other show and fast forward, slows down a bit and becomes pretty good for a while, and then gets really freaking weird at the end. And there are at least 3 major areas that I'll mention as we go along that I was severely disappointed by, one of which I knew about and had forgotten about, and is a plot point that incidentally, spoilers, people. But the other 2 are less plot related, but I'll get to them as we go along. Those are 3 major disappointments I had, and there were some other minor disappointments. But overall, it's a very interesting companion to the original. And one day I will have to read the manga. I'll have to see what that's. Apparently, it gets pretty crazy, too. Yeah, I'm glad I finally saw it. I had known the Major by reputation. He's supposed to be one of the all-time great villains, so it was great to finally get to see that play out. Yeah, Good. This is an interesting one.
All right. So, Dave asked me to hold him to last. So, Brittany, is this your first time seeing Hellsing Ultimate?
Oh, heck no. I mean, I was watching this series this time through alongside of the abridged series from Team 4-Star, which is one of their most brilliant yet underrated series out there that they put together. This is by far one of sort of my favorite stories of a Halloween-esque anime. And it's probably the only anime that's second to the Escaflowne movies for how long between episodes to be made. Because this series started, I think, in 2006 and ended in 2012, I believe.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And that's episode by episode released. I think it was like 1 to 2 episodes a year.
Mm-hmm. Is it partly because they were trying to adapt the manga, and the manga got pretty erratic there for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did I think that it was interesting how they made them pretty much movie size episodes.
Yeah.
So,
interesting approach.
Well, worth it. Gave it plenty of time to adjust the stories, even though they do speed up through episodes 1 and 2 to cover material that pretty much covered a majority of the original Hellsing. So, I mean, yes, you could watch both. You don't need to, but you get the feel of both. And it is wonderful to watch the first original Hellsing that was released in 1990. I'm trying to remember what date
I feel like that was 02, wasn't it? Or 2000, somewhere right around there.
It could have been right around there, but it literally came out rather at the beginning of the manga, so we only got the first 2 stories that were in Ultimate. Literally, the first 2 episodes of Ultimate. They could have played out more, but then there's also anime tends to drag out, so there's no telling without looking word for word to the manga to see how much those parts were.
And Endless, October 2001 as the air date of the beginning of the through the start of 02.
Okay.
Was that one.
well, actually, I would say the early 2000s was a kind of a late 90s, early 2000s was a renaissance for anime for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but I think every age has its anime style.
Yeah.
Let's see. Roger, was this your first time with Hellsing Ultimate?
Well, to let you know that, nope, this is not my first time watching this Hellsing Ultimate. Actually, I'm very well versed on this series, having watching the original series as it came out on the OVAs, read the entire manga set, and as well watched the whole thing, both in Japanese and in dubbing on the Hellsing Ultimate. So I am very familiar with it. And actually, the Hellsing is one of the few animes which I really prefer. Because of one character, I prefer the English dub versus the Japanese sub. So it's kind of an unusual situation for me. So this time around, I did watch it in English dub, and I still think it's a bit better in the English department versus the Japanese one. Yeah, this particular series was drawn originally in the manga by this guy named Hirano. He had a 10-volume series in the manga. Later on, it was animated by Gonzo. It was very well done to me. I mean, it was well done. There's some differences on how the artistic approaches to each, with some parts being a bit longer on the OVA series, on the original series, and being shorter and also better detailed on the TV series. I also did like the fact that on the new series, you do have quite a bit more storyline to absorb, because the original series kind of cut, boom.
Mm-hmm.
Now this one was able to go on. This series is kind of like set up just like I don't know, it's not the same anime, but the Garden of Sinners, how you have long chapters. So each episode, is about either between 45 minutes to a little bit longer than an hour. So actually, it was very, very good in that. And plus, It's not surprising, but on this length of series, you actually had 3 separate anime houses making this, with one being, of course, was one being Madhouse. So definitely, this I knew that this would be a big deal, and Inbro was absolutely correct. It took forever to get this thing out. It took forever. But once it was put together and put out by Funimation, both on DVD and on Blu-ray, I find that Hellsing, those original series and the TV series, to be an easy anime to watch. Very easy. I was able to watch this very quickly in a matter of a couple of days, a couple of days and a half, because it was just that was well done. I guess I'll have more to say about the series, but as we go on, we'll find out how much more I love it. So I do like it a lot.
All right. Well, let's see here. So next up, Kroll, was this your first time with Hellsing Ultimate?
Yeah, it was the first time with any kind of Hellsing. I just heard about it a couple months ago when you guys mentioned it. Immediately, I was interested because Hellsing, Dracula, always big fan. So it's definitely nothing what I expected. I mean, I didn't know exactly what to expect, but I definitely didn't expect this. I do. It was very bloody, which I enjoyed. I thought that was good, and it is about vampires, so I think should be bloody. The guns was a little bit to get used to because I prefer swords and stuff. But it was interesting, and my only complaint is the same complaint I've had with any anime that has like the little girl yell. You know what I mean? Like the Japanese girl yell. I don't know how to explain it, but and the way they have like the girls just go bug-eyed, and just the anime for that is just kind of annoying and just way over the top. I mean, that's the main reason I really want to watch anime, because I've seen that a couple times in a few things, and I was like, yeah, I'm good. So I'm still not a fan of it, but luckily they don't saturate it in the show. It's there, but it's not too bad. So I was able to enjoy the show.
I figured that you would probably enjoy it more as it ramped up, especially once they finally got to the Nazi invasion.
Yeah, well, it definitely got confusing though, because
it did towards the end. Yes,
Alucard was like gone, and like he was in the show for like a few episodes. Like, what the hell happened to him? I had to look it up because I'm like, what did I miss? Did I miss something? Like, where'd he go?
Which one?
I got a spoiler.
It was in Brazil.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. It was weird that they never called him Dracula, and all of a sudden they finally did at the end when he got his true form. They called him Dracula. It's kind of about time, because like they were calling him Alucard. I'm like, doesn't anyone know that means Dracula backwards?
Well, yeah, Alucard is back. Dracula spelled backwards.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Why didn't they ever call him Dracula? But then they finally did. Well, okay, I guess I kind of get it, because he was like in his other forms, he was just like Alucard. And then when he became his true form, they went back to his regular original name of Dracula, and of course he got called the Count too a few times.
You have a mustache.
Yeah. It was neat. So definitely nothing I've seen anything like it before, and it's definitely interesting. Makes me want to watch some other vampire animes too.
Well, just stay away from Vampire Knight.
Right.
Castlevania is on my list.
Hey, come on!
There's another
Girls
one.
gotta love vampires too.
Yeah, but Vampire Knight is the poster child for an anime that shat the bed.
Vampire Knight is Twilight the anime.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as they don't sparkle, I'm okay.
They didn't sparkle.
No.
The visual design is much better.
As long as they don't sparkle, I'm okay.
Yes,
The vampires don't sparkle.
But so Dave, you didn't quite get to the end of it, but did you enjoy what you saw?
I did enjoy what I saw. I mean, there was definitely a lot to like of the series. I mean, I definitely love the parts where especially the second blonde, which it took me a little bit to figure out that in the very beginning, you know, the one girl ended up being like Alucard's shall I say boss eventually.
Integra.
Yeah, but the protege, the blonde, that the blonde, when she picked up the gun for the first time, you saw I love the close-ups of the guns that they do. I mean, they do these really nice like camera angles on like how long some of the guns are, what they're called.
Her guns are kind of
before
cool.
they shoot, you know.
Just wait till you get to the last one she picks up.
Right?
I just love I love those cards, you know, and there's definitely blood, so that's cool. I mean, I'm offended when somebody gets punched and there's not even at least a little bit of blood. So
yeah, like come on.
But
that was rarely a problem in this.
Yeah,
no, that was not a problem. So I'm glad that this anime was not afraid of doing things. So.
The vampire anime.
But I had a fairly entertaining time watching the episodes, and I hope that I'll be able to maybe catch up on the last two discs like later this week. So
you're at what, like 6, 7, 8?
They got 2 episodes to go, so I guess 8. So because you need 9 and 10, I guess.
Yeah.
Which.
There was a scene late in the series where I was watching it, and I felt the need to quote Tim from Jurassic Park. Look at how much blood.
So when you want to see blood, when you get to the last episode, right?
So for me, this was not a first viewing. Oddly enough, I did not remember the ending when I first watched it, which is strange because I know I watched it all the way through. I didn't collect it until it was out all the way, but I had watched the original series. It was one of the first anime that I picked up on DVD, so it was kind of cool to get a hold of it because it was really cheap at the time. And I really liked it. I loved the anime opening music that they did. That actually the opener at the beginning for the original series just pulled me in with the music. I can
play it right now if you want it.
I'm trying to keep my monetization on YouTube, which is 0 right now. But I'm not going to give them my $0.
Yeah.
But I do think that it was a really amazing series. And people were telling me, "Oh, Ultimate's even better. It improves upon every aspect of the original." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm willing to check it out." And then I did, and I remembered the Nazi vampire thing, and then I forgot the rest. And then I remembered it again when I rewatched it, and I said, there are some things that definitely improved. But there are other things that I felt like the other series did better, so it kind of mixes on that. And story elements, I thought to myself, some of them I wish that they had not gone with, but that's how it is when you follow the manga.
Yeah.
So, but we'll get to that as it goes. But still, I really enjoy it. I think it is a great anime for Halloween. And I think we can go ahead and dive in.
Okay.
So we start really with that first encounter. I believe they have the encounter at the church first.
I think they did start with that, yeah.
With the police, and realizing that police don't do well against vampires or ghouls, which are created when a same-sex vampire drains them of their blood and then they come back.
Which this, if I remember correctly, was an aspect barely, if at all, touched on in the first series. Am I remembering that correctly?
No, they touched upon this in the first episode.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I must have missed it, because it was more prominently explained, I guess, this time around. But
expansion in this, I think in the original series, they still talked about the same thing happens. It's just that some of the sequences were a little bit more drawn out.
Well, a lot more drawn out. That first episode of this one covers what, like 5 episodes of the first show?
Yeah.
And it's like in that thing with the police was a full-on episode, if I remember correctly. It was either I think it was the first episode, but it was like a full thing. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this is disappointment number 1. The shorter time allotted to some of the stuff covered in the first show. The pacing on this series is all over the map, and it's especially bad in those first 2 episodes because they were basically trying to rush you through everything you'd already seen. And one of the biggest missing pieces, Brandon actually already mentioned another one, and I know Roger will disagree and Dave might, but the opening theme on the first series is so freaking awesome. It is a huge part of the series, and I really like Wonder too. And this one basically has no real opener. They have some interesting title cards, but there's no opener music. And the ender is a hodgepodge of music that mostly works really well. But the biggest thing is you don't get to spend as much time with the characters. So there's 2 major issues with that. And I would argue 3 and 4. Arguably, Alucard and Integra suffer from this.
I'm going to disagree with you there.
Okay.
A lot of them, we actually began this episode on one key thing of the series. And it was a little bit of a full episode in the original series. Okay. And that was we actually start with Integra having to go into having the betrayal on her family.
That was a good way to start it. Yes.
And they didn't really start that the first time. The first time they just went straight into the cops situation.
You do get that, and you do get those like flashback episodes for every character, sometimes in very awkward places in the narrative. But in terms of like organically getting to know the characters during the show, you get a lot more of that, I think, in the first series. Less so with Alucard and Integra, but mostly there's a big difference. And I won't go into too much detail yet on Walter, but he suffers from this lack of buildup, and Saris suffers horribly. For me, one of the most memorable and greatest aspects of Hellsing, the original series, was Saris's struggle over becoming a vampire, and that is mostly cut out of this. There's hardly any.
I felt like she struggled on this one. I mean, I know about the others, so I don't know the difference, but I saw her struggling a lot on this.
I did not really. She's basically used as a background and joke character until she becomes a badass, and once she does, she's a badass.
Well, here's the thing, though. We see a different backstory on Saris. Saris' backstory was not written until after the first anime came out. They wrote their own backstory, and then they wrote Sarah's backstory afterwards, and we do get a flashback of what happened to her parents and what made her become a cop.
And that's
later in the series. Walter, you don't need to know anything because of Walter as a character and the events later in the show. You don't need to know Walter's backstory until that point, because if you do,
You don't
if
need
you
to.
do, yes, Jacob, because if you do know that beforehand, it's going to be something like, oh, I'm revealing that he's going to do the heel turn that he does later.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all with Walter. What I'm saying with Walter is in the original series, he's really likable.
Yeah.
You love it when I love the scenes with Walter. And
I really like Walter in this series.
I feel like
when he betrayed, I was like, what the hell?
I feel like what happened would have had more of a sting if he had been as likable as he was the first time around. Here, he's more serviceable. You know.
Well, he's a butler. He's an English butler.
He reminded me of Alfred. Like they even call him Alfred in there, you know. So
I also kind of missed the crew that they had, the soldiers that they had in the first series.
Again, that's anime only, though.
I know, but still, I kind of missed them because they were fun. But I did like the mercenary crew that they put in here.
Yeah.
And when we get to them, particularly the main guy, I got Gambit vibes off of him.
This is one. Ceres Victoria is one character that I will say that if the Ultimate is truly, the back and forth comedy thing with her is in the manga, I will say that the anime is superior in the manga with how it handles Ceres as far as the original for me. Because to me, she is tonal whiplash.
Yeah.
And that to me is poor storytelling. I don't like it because it goes in there. Now, again, that's my opinion because that's what we're here, opinions. But to me, I can't take her story fully seriously because they're always using her as a joke character through halfway of the series. And that's sad because she was one of my favorite characters in the original animation, but turned out to be an annoying character through most of Ultimate, and then I kind of liked her towards the end, but because I kept rooting for that character I knew from the original series, but she just became more of an annoying character to me. And then when they brought in that other story, I was like, why bother? Why bother with it? You've used her as a joke for this whole time. Why bother trying to make her serious now?
I can tell you why. It's a connection between her and Alucard. Both of them had the R word, rape, involved in their backstory.
Yeah.
Both of them had this huge, traumatic, disturbing thing. And a lot of that is explained in how Alucard's personality is. When he switches back to Dracula, he's a completely different personality. He's serious. He's toned. He's like, oh, my life has been messed up. Well, but when he turns into Alucard, oh, he's already, nuts to go out and kill everybody.
Right.
And so it's that concept, with the way the vampires are written in this series, to have that sort of snap in their personality. Something broke them. And so we see that with Sarah started developing into more of a serious character as she goes.
Speaking of the more bloodthirsty characters, the one I think did get more characterization this time around, and I think was bad. I felt like I got a lot more of Anderson this time around, and I kind of like
you get more of his story, because I mean the original we only got that one episode.
Yeah.
Plot,
Two in the original. You had the sword dancer, and you had another storytelling later on in the original series. But going on with the characters, I didn't have much of trouble with most of the characters. I understand that there's a progression of like in Ceres's condition, that going from a more innocent girl to a more advanced vampire as time goes on, because there will be a progression. In the manga, there is those odd comedic kind of stills and weird story little blips. Weird stuff. It did happen in the manga too. The manga had some weird comedy with lots of blood. So Ceres does fulfill the role of having some relief, on the anime, since the anime is kind of, for an anime, it has a certain amount of blood and a certain amount of gore and a certain amount of violence in it. And just like in the manga itself, the little thing about Walter, I do have some differences of opinion on that. I think both Walters, both in the original series fulfilled a role of being a kind of a servant person until he reveals what he is, as well as what happened with this series. But of course, in Ultimate, you do have a additional progression with Walter you didn't have in the original series, and as well as you know, I'm getting ahead of myself on that. But overall, I mean, to answer Kabukijake's question, I did watch every single time on the original OVA's opening. I did like it was one of the few anime I do religiously watch that opener. I was a little bit disappointed because I forgot that there wasn't any openers with the Hellsing Ultimates. They just ran into the story and they had a ending which was a hodgepodge of different musical tones put together and some scenes and kind of cute stuff. So I normally fast forwarded through that. But I guess I am running on, but I'll let everybody else go on.
Now I'll say that original scene where basically Ceres the vampire is created was, I thought, done pretty well, and it was, it was short, and we could have used a little more, but it was definitely done well. I think the biggest issue, the individual set pieces in episode 1 were good. There were just so many of them that it really was like watching the first half of the series on fast forward, because you had the scene with that, you had the first encounter with Anderson, you had the vampire couple that they were chasing, which I think that was like a full episode, and here it was like 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, it did not last.
Not even that. Not even that.
So,
but,
yeah.
I mean, we get through the initial thing with the priest, and of course. Ceres ends up taking too much, a slight flesh wound.
A slight wound.
And so she's given that choice to live on as a vampire or die by Alucard, who shows... And Alucard is an interesting character when it comes to anime. And there are characters like this, but it was probably the first time I'd seen a character like this, except for maybe Goku, and even Goku isn't like this, really, where the character, for the most part, barely struggled at all when it came to fighting enemies until the end. And
then you need to watch Goku in Japanese.
Because, and even Goku had some struggles because he got killed a number of times. He just got better. But I did find it interesting to see a character who's just basically like, yeah, you're a fierce vampire, who gives a darn? And I'm stronger than you. And that was kind of a badass scene at the beginning.
Oh yeah, the best scene between Anderson and Alucard happens in the first episode of Ultimate. For sure. That the strange sword stance and the battle. I kind of wish they had a little more to it. Like on the first series, they actually have 2 really good sword battles. Now, the original series, but they didn't have the first scene with the Ultimate. They really had a good scene with Alucard and the Paladin, right? Fight together was really good. Then the later one wasn't quite as good, in my opinion, as compared to the first series.
Now, remind me again, because this is one thing I have forgotten. I feel like Maxwell made an appearance in the first series, but that was it. Is that
He
right?
did. He made one.
So he, of course, shows up, I think, in this first episode too, but he ends up becoming a major player later on. But that was one that I had not been familiar with ahead of time. And
he speaks for the Pope.
He had a blurb in the original series. You just know he's a Catholic, basically. The only real Catholic we meet in the first series was Alexander.
Well, I believe we do hear about the Iscariot organization and sort of they have sort of a feud going on with Hellsing and that sort of thing. We hear about that, but
they have a number of treaties and agreements that are completely trodden upon by the Catholics. Basically.
So what are your thoughts on Anderson as a character?
You wouldn't have much fun with Alucard. Alucard just dominates every single person he meets until he meets Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
Anderson's a great foil for Alucard, in my opinion.
Great! They even had the same size.
I mean, as you look at it towards the end, Alucard's even willing to hold back a little bit because he wants to fight him on equal footing in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was calling out to Alexander's humanity. Let's drag out the fight. I want to have this result because of the fight.
Right. He's an interesting one because at first he almost feels like he's pretty much the lapdog of the Catholic Church, just like the way Alucard kind of comes off as the lapdog of Hellsing. But they're both characters that you get the sense that they could turn the tables at any time if they really wanted to. But I think they both like the challenge of being held back a little bit. I really do. I think that Alucard likes having those restrictions on him because it makes him hold back and gives him, because otherwise he would dominate.
Yeah.
And Anderson he may be a devout Christian, but he also is spoiling for a good fight. And he is one of those people that wants to fight someone worthy of his time. And I do like how later on he even breaks with Maxwell because he actually he does think for himself, and that. So I thought that was pretty fun.
Well, he also knows that Maxwell snapped at that point.
Well, yeah.
I mean, the Catholic Church in this is not a very good player.
No.
I wonder how this.
Spoiler: no one is good in this series. No one's a good guy in this series. Everybody's an asshole.
I wouldn't say that. I count the Hellsings as good guys.
Hellsing's as close to the good guys as you can get.
Yeah, you can really argue the only real good person in this whole series was Ceres Victoria. She's the only one that has any kind of moral whatsoever about killing.
Yeah.
Because the rest of them don't. All of them are hired killers, or they eat people, or they kill people. Mm-hmm. So, but I would think the only hero in here was Ceres.
Mm-hmm.
They really like to play up the original connection of the Catholic Church to the Nazi Party in World War II in this.
Right.
And,
I mean, the Pope. The Holy Church did nothing about the Nazis. They could have spoken out, but they let it go.
In the story, the Nazis do ask like a church for a favor to turn a blind eye, and they did.
Mm-hmm. Which
caused a big problem later on. 50 years later.
Well, and again, that comes to it. That whole idea is like, well, they're killing heathens. So go for it. Which again. What they're doing.
Well, the Catholics would never consider as good guys.
They, in this one, the Catholic Church, like, well, you're killing Protestants. Who gives a darn?
Right.
I don't think Catholics in this case ever forgot the Protestants. What happened back in the Spanish Armada and breaking away of from the Catholic Church to a more Protestant religion. So this is old enemies speaking to each other, old feelings talking to each other.
They needed to have a zombie Henry VIII fighting Maxwell at the end.
You add into that, because when we go to Alucard's backstory a little bit and see a little bit of it, the true story of Vlad the Impaler, the Catholic Church did say, screw it when he was trying to hold off the Mongol. So, it was a really nasty point that they kind of did. Screw over the guy who would become fictitiously Dracula, and in this case, Alucard.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's appropriate that he's also got that rivalry against the Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is no love lost between Alucard and the Catholic Church. Vice versa with the English people and the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church bench everybody. There are no friendlies in this particular series. If you ask me about it, and the cops don't like anybody, the vampires don't like anybody, the religious people don't like anybody. They just can't get along.
Mm-hmm.
So we also have, I mean, I'm not going to dwell much on the vampire couple. They didn't last long.
No.
Their main thing, I think, was to
Yeah,
introduce the fact that they found those weird little computer chips in their body.
The freak chip was
That,
always
and I think it also introduces Saris as the sniper.
Yeah.
You know,
It did. I have to say, Abridged did the best thing with this, which is they did a Twilight joke with this couple, and the brief moment they appear. So yeah, I have to enjoy that moment. But yeah, they weren't good in the first series, and they're not good in this series. So I'm kind of not hurt when they're just kind of washed over.
But you do know in the original series, Alucard calls them both Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel
vampires.
like that's kind of, they were the vampire equivalent thereof in the first one, or that was the idea, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
because I know in the that's one of the parts that were different in the Ultimate. They really compacted on the original two vampires. You know, the introduction freak vampires versus in the original series where they almost had like a half an episode dedicated to who they are, what they're doing. They're drinking blood, eating people, robbing banks, doing all kinds of nasty things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do kind of like, in a way, that kind of whiplash there. You build up these characters, and then Alucard just knocks them down like nothing.
Yeah,
right.
But, I mean, the Valentines is one of the best examples
Oh
of that.
yeah,
Which
Yeah,
I am kind of
great.
sad about them kind of moving through that at a super high pace in
Right.
Ultimate. But
And
because they were really vicious. In the, I mean, okay, in the manga, were they kind of just glossed over like they were
No.
in Ultimate?
no, the same thing happens. They're both introduced as a couple of people, that normal tourists walking up to the gate. They find out they're not tourists, and they had the bus there, and then
Mhm.
had the zombie invasion. Yeah, it kind of progresses like the manga did.
Am I remembering correctly? I think that's played out over a couple of episodes before, at least.
This was several episodes in the original
Yeah.
series. This is
Yeah.
majority of the series
Yeah, it was-
because there was so much to cover, and they wanted to draw it out so much.
Yeah. This is one of the areas where I would say that, and because of the pacing of the series and the decision to downplay what had already been animated, this was one of the biggest things that kind of hurt Walter, because the first big reveal about him is that he's secretly a badass. Because again, first you think he's just a butler. You think he's kind of, and for the first, well, he is a hell of a butler, yes. But
No.
in the first
We will not
series-
give him that status of a hell of a butler.
who do you think will win, him or Sebastian?
Sebastian, sadly.
Sebastian was a supernatural.
We don't know if Sebastian can die, so I have to say Sebastian.
Okay. But so basically, though, he again in the first series for about 7 episodes, you just think he's someone that Integra trusts deeply. Obviously, Alucard trusts him and likes him to whatever degree he can like a human, and he seems like a very pleasant chap. And then when the invasion of the manor happens, you realize, holy crap, this dude can fight. But in this version, that's pushed to the middle of the second episode. You don't get that build up. So it's still cool to see him let loose on the Valentines, but you don't get that build up of, holy crap, where did this come from?
Alucard calls this guy the Angel of Death.
Yeah.
I really feel like they tried, they wanted to save most of their energy and most of their animation budget for the Nazi invasion of London.
Definitely. And for what came after, yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the part where what Madhouse had to do.
Yeah. It's a shame, honestly, and I guess we'll get into this when we get into the production, but when I was reading about the different houses involved with animating each segment of this, I honestly have to agree with I kind of wish they had just stuck with one studio. I think the visual look probably is the best in the early part. In
But
terms
over 12 years, you can't guarantee a studio.
Yeah, I
still
know.
exists.
I know. That's
There's a part of me that says they should have just waited until the manga ended and then started it.
right.
Well, if that's true. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the kind of unique ending you had with the original series. They took a
Right.
whole different.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse, exactly. All
At
right.
least with this version, they got a coherent story that's
yeah.
loyal to the manga, to the beginning to the end.
But I mean, speaking of this second episode, there is a key difference in the end of the Valentine story in the first anime and in this anime.
Okay.
And that is, I'm trying to remember the younger brother's name, the foul mouth.
It was Luke and Jan, right? I think, wasn't Luke the older one and Jan was the younger one?
Is it Jan? I don't recall if it's Jan.
I'll look it up. I think it's Jan. Let's see.
I know it's not Luke. Luke is the blonde.
Luke is the older one.
But, yeah, I mean, in the original, he gets through into the room and bites,
Luke and Jan confirmed.
and he bites Integra.
Right.
And so it's big to do later in the original anime that Integra's been bit. She's getting infected. And in this case, she doesn't get bit. He just gets blown to shit as soon as he opens the door. So, I mean, it's, you know, there is that one point where you can see where the two series differ. It's where they split right there. But yeah, I mean, we don't get as much drawn out, so we don't get the build-up of Walter, which is, yeah, kind of missing, but at the same time, I don't feel you lose the badassery that is Walter. Well, I mean, his first move is to cut across all the troops behind Jan and cut the cigar. So, I mean...
you don't lose on the badassery. I'm saying you're losing on the other part of it, and the pleasant surprise of learning about the badassery.
But I mean, that's saying it's taken us, you know, how many years before Alfred from Batman really showed that he could kick ass?
Yeah, now he turns out to be some sort of super secret assassin, super agent, whatever it is.
Yeah,
I love that show.
Well, I do think that this series does something that is very similar to how Full Metal Alchemist did with Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I think the series assumes that you have watched the original Hellsing animation,
right.
Or at least read the manga,
or read the manga,
right?
And the same thing with Full Metal Alchemist. I feel like they were like, "Oh, everybody saw the original series, so we don't have to."
Assumptions make an ass
was
out of you and
more
me.
creative about it, though. They kind of did a grab bag of. They did a couple of scenes abridged. They played up a couple scenes that were largely left out of the original, and then they just skipped over a bunch of stuff or whatever. But yeah, you're right. They make that assumption. But again, they get through that in like 3 episodes, and then you've got 60-odd episodes from there to build the new story. And this one, it feels more...
Well, we kind of get after the Valentine stuff is done, it starts building on the new stuff.
Oh yeah.
So really, 2 episodes in.
Right after that, you start into the Nazi invasion of Britain.
And arguably, even the Valentine thing mostly takes a full episode, so the pacing starts to correct itself in the second episode. It's mostly that first episode that feels like whoa, what?
So I mean, we get to around there. Was it around there that we get the flashback for Integra finding Alucard?
Well, that was right at the beginning.
Was that at the beginning?
Yeah,
it's like I say.
Yeah,
that was right at the
flashbacks are
in this version, they start right off the bat, pretty much right off the bat, finding her.
The series begins and ends with the 2 of them, which is kind of cool.
But it is it's interesting. Those 2 really are what catches you up to where you would have been in the original series.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of diverge.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is a divergence, from the original OVAs to the new series. Mostly because they don't have Incognito in the Ultimate.
Incognito, that's what that dumbass's name was.
Yes, it was Incognito.
I didn't
Yes.
care for him.
Well, I think it threw him in there just to have something in the last part. Yeah, because I think when they was made that the manga was completed. Oh, I thought the manga was not completed yet.
Yeah.
So they said, well, you're not going to animate something, so let's find the ultimate vampire that Alucard could fight against.
And I will say that was one of the weakest parts of the original series. That character just
it's kind of tacked on like Frankenstein.
Yeah.
You know,
So the show kind of ended with a whimper.
The only cool thing he could do was make blood out or bullets out of his own blood.
Yeah,
it looks kind of scary.
It was kind of interesting to see another culture's take on a vampire. Or really a vampire of another culture. So that was kind of cool. But otherwise, yeah. So now, I know they go to Brazil, but what else do they do on the third episode?
Well,
you have the museum. You have the museum walk. Which you have the re-meeting of Alucard and Anderson, wanting to start shit in the British Museum, right then and there. But of course, we get the goofy moments of
Saris and
Saris has a tour group.
tour group, yeah.
Which I'll admit, that was one of the better bits of comic relief, I think. There were a few that worked really well, and there were a few that did not. But I was amused by that.
Yeah, in the manga, I think when the old people, some sort of like old soldier, looks at the Alucard's jacket, so, oh, that's a big sucker. I had something like that when I was fighting in the war. And then the guy calls him out on it. Yeah, so it was really humorous. They get dispatched to Brazil to look for what were they looking for?
In the beginning, when they're in the museum, they find out about the chips. They ask the Catholics about the chips. The Catholics send them over to Brazil as a possible connection because, oh my God, the Nazis escaped into South America. How did that ever happen? Oh, geez, it was our fault. So they go into Brazil to go searching for that thing, and well, they didn't have to really search; it came to them. But
now, the only kind of real critique I have, with this part is they really do not explain about the freak chip. They did a lot of explanation on the original VA. This is the chip, and it changes people's natures, and they kind of like glossed over it. They said, well, there's some sort of doodad that happens to be around here, but they really don't explain where all these vampires come from.
That they're not even real vampires; they're synthetic vampires.
Yeah, it was kind of like whipped up in the lab.
Yeah.
I think they demonstrate pretty clearly that the type of vampire that Alucard and Saris are is very different from the others. But I really feel like they did gloss over the explanations.
Yeah, they call them true vampires or no life kings.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the freakoids or the freak vampires have some characteristics, but they're not as deeply connected to their natures as Saris could be, or definitely as Alucard has shown.
They can't heal, which is one of the key things. Because that's one of the things Alucard taunts Luke with in the fight when he's literally butchering Luke, and he's like, "Come on, heal, do something."
Actually, this was one a plot point, and you guys that know the manga better than me could probably tell me if this was something more made up for the first series or not. But this was one of the things I thought was missing here on Saris, because they had that whole plot line of her refusing to feed and how it weakened her. I don't know if that was...
They covered it in the Ultimate a little bit.
They covered it a little bit, but not very clearly.
It basically comes down to a scene between her and Integra.
They made it very clear.
The food, and she couldn't eat the food because she was completely not human anymore.
Yeah. They made it very clear the effect of her feeding and that became very clear. But I wondered as well, because they also left the question hanging of, well, did she have any other feedings after this one guy? They didn't really, because I did notice that she never seemed to have a solid arm again, even 30 years later.
She loses the arm. And later on, she could use her powers to formulate an arm.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you would think that if she had the healing fully functional, that she might have had a corporeal arm instead of a weird energy arm.
My statement on that would be pretty much that because Alucard wasn't around for 30 years to teach her how to do it, she couldn't do it.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
He's teaching her throughout the series on how to use this power, and he never really got around to how to heal your own arm. So
yeah, that's true. I guess it never came up.
It's either that, or her arm was lost.
Right.
Yeah, that's lost.
Well, she did watch him come back from nothing in that first encounter with Anderson, so she knew it could happen. It's like,
Alucard did suffer a decapitation that did actually nothing to stop him, and later on in the fight.
Yeah.
Integra says, did you go through steps 1 through 12?
He's like that ninja replacement technique where it was like they thought he was decapitating him, but they weren't.
Exactly. He does do that. He does it later in the show.
Right.
He just does it.
You do have a part where Ceres is not really accepting her relationship with Alucard too closely, because in the first fight, when Alucard loses his head, Ceres actually unconsciously picked up his head. I started walking with it. Said, "What happened to my master?" He started looking, the head! Oh my God, my head! Like that.
And again, Bridge did a wonderful scene there where they were like, "Police girl, put me into your breasts."
Yes, be a good idea.
Yeah.
So, we haven't heard a lot lately from Krull or Dave. Y'all have any thoughts on these early episodes?
A lot of the early episodes are pretty decent from my point of view. I do like the fact that we do get kind of a little bit of an origin story, and like how Alucard it became like the protector of the descendant of so-called Hellsing and Hellsing Corp, so to speak. So, and then you get into the whole vampire prodigy, how she got. How that particular prodigy, and she ended up dying, and given a choice whether to become a vampire or not. I did like all those vampire spells that went into the whole. When they were supposed to just go in for this one particular thing, and they didn't expect the scrolls.
Oh yeah, it's labeled up for the slide.
To get on all the windows. You thought that Alucard was entirely finished, and that mutated. I forget what his name was.
Anderson?
Yeah, Anderson. Anderson is just a cool character all around. I mean, his mutation upgrades were pretty cool, with the lightning flashes and things of that nature. Just the way that they portrayed him going after the girl, and she just had her first hunt. so to speak. I guess this was her first hunt for killing vampires, So
it was her second time
it was her
around.
second.
It was an early one, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it felt like it was like one of her first fledgling things, and all of a sudden, her master was like completely gone, and she was stuck in that hallway, not knowing what the fuck to do.
I do like that they have the around this time is where they really fully start to flesh out the mercenaries and get them introduced as well, which is good because Hellsing lost a lot of people in that initial raid with the Valentines.
Oh yeah, they got eaten alive, literally, and then the soldiers came back as ghouls. When they get killed by vampires, they come back as ghouls.
They only had 4 members left, which was the 4 main characters.
Yeah.
Well, Walter, Alucard, Saris, and Hellsing.
The butler.
I do kind of like these. I do like this mercenary team. It is a fun mercenary team.
The Wild Geese.
Yeah.
The Wild Geese, yep.
Yeah,
And
the
then,
leader's name was Kip.
Well, yeah, Kip, is it Belot? I think it was Bernadette.
French, or like
Kip
Bernadette.
Bernadette.
Now, you don't really get to see how badass they really are until they are defending the mansion from the Nazis when they land. You can tell that they're badass by their background, but that they're
they're simply out of their league with the vampires.
They're out of their league with the vampires. But after they get introduced to it later on, they realize, okay, this is just a different enemy. Let's shift our tactics.
Right.
And very, very much Predator situation. I mean, you're putting a bunch of just strong-armed military men against things that they don't know what the hell they're doing up against.
They don't even believe in vampires. They're elite set. This like a good analogy with Predator is you have 2 elite teams that are used to killing off other humans, but with this they get eaten alive. Pretty much.
Well, I believe in between these, of course, you have the whole confrontation with Brazil, where you got the police, and
the dandy man.
You had the
the
card man, the card flamingo guy.
The dandy man. That's his name. The dandy man.
Which, I mean, he shows that he's a pretty dangerous guy, and until Alucard shows him
his cards.
Pretty literally, yeah. It does show him his own cards.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But and I believe, gosh, the when Alucard fights the sniper vampire from the Nazis, when did that happen?
That happens not too long. It happens 2 more episodes from now. It starts. Well, actually, I don't. It might happen in the next episode.
The
honestly,
sniper.
the sniper, Rip Van Winkle.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
He's one of the ones that's kind of leading the pack of Nazi vampires over there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, I know who you're talking
like a Millennium Vampire. We meet. It's Rip Van Winkle.
wasn't around long, so I'd forgotten about her.
And have a track home into her targets multiple times.
Yeah,
tracking
once
bullet.
Alucard got involved. Actually, once Alucard gets involved, most of them don't last very long.
No, well, I mean, in Rip Van Winkle's case, Alucard got it started in the way that she couldn't handle. But in the Dandy Man, you actually get a pretty decent fight. You see him actually struggle, but when he gets to Van Winkle, he kind of just owns that fight from the get-go. But that'd be into the next episode, which would be you're learning a bit about the Nazis, because at this point the Nazis are starting to come out. You meet the Major, you see a bit of the team he's put together, and the Nazis their plan starts to come together. And their first plan is to take over a British aircraft carrier, which is where they put Van Winkle on, and they literally slaughter this aircraft carrier. and Alucard comes in and basically rides an SR-71 Blackbird, and literally plows it in the center of the aircraft carrier.
And then rides the remains of the aircraft carrier back to London.
Yes. He's basically just cruising along on a ghost ship.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
To quote, I mean, unfortunately, he's on that ship for a long time.
Yeah.
He's on there for like 3 to 4 episodes.
Yeah,
as
there's
the
even
invasion
at
is
least one
taking place.
episode he's not even in.
Yeah, and I mean, and basically, I love Abridged handling it. It's like, Lord, I wish something's not happening. I hope nothing's happening while I'm here. You know, it's like everything's freaking happening around us.
Right. It's like, guys, I actually watched this with my brother. Incidentally, the same brother, we watched the first Hellsing together several years ago. So he was interested in watching this one. And both of us, we're kind of joking about Alucard's lack of involvement. And we're like, well, he'll get, he's like, it's like, he's like, I'm Alucard. I do what I want. You know, he just kind of, I'll get there when I get there. It's like he wanted to make an entrance, obviously.
Well, I mean, they are standing true to the one concept that a vampire cannot cross water.
Right.
And so he's on a boat. He has to wait for the boat to get there because he can't go there himself.
Plus, they show his. I think they traveled with his coffin or whatever, and he didn't want to leave that behind. Like, yeah.
So he decided he's going to just take a pleasure cruise.
Exactly.
or to quote Abridged, he went out for a walk.
Meanwhile, the Nazis decide they're going to just go ahead and launch their invasion of London. And they just go straight to London.
But before they properly launch it, you do get that great little scene where the Major sends Schrodinger to meet with the
that's what happens in 4, because you also have the Queen. Alucard apparently knows the Queen. And it's funny in either this or in the Abridged, because the Abridged, makes it a little more, sexual innuendo between him and the Queen. But we don't know if that still didn't occur in the Ultimate, because he's real friendly with her, and he's like, "Oh, hey, Queenie, how's it going?"
Yeah, he was very friendly with her, yes. And, it's kind of funny when you think about it, because we also were talking earlier, we were joking a little bit about Black Butler, where the Queen is directly involved in the activities of Phantom Hive. And I just rewatched season 1 of Hetalia, where Britain is portrayed as being surrounded by all these mythical creatures. And it's like, it seems to be like an anime fascination that Britain is like, almost you could say in bed with all these monsters.
I mean, you could also play into it with the Moriarty the Patriot also kind of does a little bit of it.
Right.
More so with crime, less so with monsters.
Right.
But they do kind of seem to be a little supernatural for being just normal criminals.
He touched too quite a bit in that in Index as well. There's a lot of British, Catholic stuff. So yeah.
Well, let's. Why don't we go ahead and move to the Nazi invasion?
That's what I was trying to hopefully speed us up to.
Because the Nazi invasion, I really feel like the animation kicked it up a notch.
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, lots of explosions.
Yeah.
And lots of action. Basically, from this to the end, it's basically
just nonstop action.
And the dirigible that the Major and his crew were riding on was a pretty impressive looking.
Yeah, the dirigible.
Not the smartest weapon or thing to bring into a war, in my opinion. But
now get this, they also have jets too. I mean, the Germans decided to use dirigibles, and the Allies have jets.
Right.
So what? Go figure.
I was curious as to Was there a scene, and I missed it, where the British military confronted them? Because other than the aircraft carrier, I don't recall seeing a lot of confrontation.
There were some like police actions, but they all got eaten up by the back.
Where was the military?
There was one moment where with the planes, but that's when Van Winkle was still alive, and she just wiped them out because she just used her tracking bullet to go through all the planes at once.
Because even then,
and also we did see a little bit again of like I was talking about that meeting of like people like Sir Islands and Penwood and all those kind of people. You look at the people that they had who were in positions of power, and they did not really inspire confidence in their ability to stop an invasion.
Well, obviously, the British military is very incompetent.
Although Penwood did get a nice little moment of glory right before his
demise.
Yeah. The British military just kind of just lays over in this series.
Yeah.
And you almost got to say the same for America, because they say they also invade America at the same time. Yeah. And they already took over the White House. And it's like...
The president was dead. Whoever vice president became, but was it the vice president that turned into a vampire?
Which also feels like a pretty glaring, dangling thread there of who was controlling the American invasion and how was that dealt with in this series?
Oh, it never was. They left that way.
The Millennium was running both campaigns.
So maybe they were just like, fuck America, we beat them in Britain and that's what matters.
maybe, but I have to say I prefer Bridges' version of it, which is, oh, America's burning. He's like, well, what's causing it? Oh, we aren't behind it, but it's burning.
Basically, America gets eaten up by the vampires, and they focus back on Britain because Britain's the only place where you have Alucard. So that's where they're mostly concerned about.
I'd like to say they just discontinued.
Actually, no. Later in the series, they determined that he is everywhere and anywhere. So,
well, with Schrodinger, yes. With Schrodinger, yes. But yeah, the Major's intention for this whole battle, the reason for this whole battle, is Alucard.
Yeah.
He wants to peel back the onion and get to the core. Yeah. And once they get to the core, they infect them with the Schrodinger's blood, and then curse Alucard to a never-ending turmoil of conflicting personalities into the oblivion.
All right. So this is probably as good a time as any, though, that we got, because again, I saw a lot of lists, a lot of discussions, a lot of people claiming that the Major was like one of the great anime villains of all time. So I'm just kind of curious what y'all think of him.
Hell no, he's just some fat piece of shit. Of course he was the bad guy. He was completely evil. He was no Darth Vader. The guy couldn't shoot straight.
No.
Yeah, he lost his. In the end, he loses his own life.
Actually, my brother made the comment of something. He said something to the effect of, "How did he even join the SS?" or something like that. And I was like, "Well, he probably joined the Stormtrooper division."
Well, here's the thing: the SS. A lot of people don't remember the SS included a lot of different divisions.
Oh yeah.
And in his case, it would be the occult division.
Yeah.
So that's definitely occult and technology. So you wouldn't really be shooting if you're studying that crap.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Major sucks at shooting.
Yeah.
That is his. He is a horrible soldier, but the man just wants to die, and that's the main reason the whole invasion. They want to die, but they want to die in a glorious battle of death.
Right.
So in the case of the Major, there's a bit of revenge too, because apparently he meets an Alucard 50 years prior, and they had some sort of ongoing battle over there.
Which I have to say, the biggest what the hell moment of this series is Alucard was a woman in the 40s.
Why not?
Don't forget that Alucard says that sex doesn't matter to him. You know,
Yeah.
No!
It could be anything. It could be man, woman, in between, whatever.
I mean, you know,
Well, if you ever watch the
didn't
Hell
Dracula?
TV show, Dracula's a woman in that.
Well, didn't Dracula also change sex in the Bram Stoker version?
He can become the Bram Stoker version. He can become anything that through
Right.
illusion. He doesn't really change gender. He just kind of does an illusion thing. And this, I mean, they kind of onplay that Walter maybe had a thing for Alucard a little bit.
That's a very light hint, a cryptic hint. Somewhere.
Definitely seems that way at times, but yeah, when it comes
to explain why Alucard went female mode on Walter towards the end of the show.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing. Everybody goes towards Alucard. Everything plays to that. The end. Even the Catholic Church's involvement at the end of it is really just to take out Alucard.
well,
they really want Britain too, but Alucard is a major card they have to remove from the board.
Yeah.
We didn't touch on Alucard when he gets back to England. That's when he unleashes his full form.
Did y'all cover the mansion stuff that happened before that? Where
not really. We kind of skipped the mansion also with the invasion, which brings Victoria out, but kills all the wild geese. Well, most of the wild geese. I think 2 survive.
There were 2 survivors.
They put up one heck of a fight, especially at the
Well,
beginning.
no, one of the survivors did not. See, the one.
Right.
One of the survivors was the chicken.
Well, I mean, like, as a force at the beginning of that thing, when they're invading, they're thinking they're going to take it down easily.
Oh, hell yeah.
They show that they're able to hold their own when they have time to prepare a battlefield. And
they landmined the whole field.
Yeah.
They blew the hell out of... well, I mean, Sarris did a lot of blowing things up, including the blimps.
Yeah. And that's one of the funny things. It's one of the things I like with Sarris that they use for comic relief and to show her badassery is the idea of the comically large guns that keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
To quote a bridge, bitches love cannons.
They was called a helicannon. They had a helicannon 1 and helicannon 2.
Yeah.
And even a modification to the helicannon 2 to make it even bigger with it. What was it?
Right.
38 millimeter whatever
rounds. Yeah, 38 millimeter rounds. And then, well, the end was the full 8 millimeter, and the giant.
Right.
She literally rips out the blimp's gun.
Right. But like in this one, she basically, I would say this would be like basic anti-aircraft fire or whatever, which is still a person to be holding.
Well, not. It's not a person carrying anti-aircraft weapon. It is what would normally be mounted into a machine.
The Helicannon 2 was a weapons platform, just like with a Gundam. Was a Gundam? Was it Stardust Memories? They have that weapons platform for Gundam 3. It reminded me very strongly of that thing. Yeah, but it was a weapons platform with missiles and cannons and rapid fire machine guns and all kinds of cool stuff to cause death and destruction.
Well, speaking of death and destruction, of course, this invasion is being held by this evil psycho bitch named Zoran Blitz, who has words tattooed over half her body, and she's carrying this great big death scythe.
very much the model of the 1980s German weightlifter.
And ironically, I think she was the only one that really showed, other than Alucard, a lot of magic use.
Well, it was at the beginning. One of the Valentines showed some.
Yeah.
And
some decent trickery, yes.
Yeah, Zoran and Alucard.
But Alucard, I think, was it then? Alucard had told Saris early on, he had planted the seed of the idea that you should use your third eye. And she is able to use that to see through the trickery.
Yeah.
He told that during Anderson fight, I believe.
Right.
Honestly,
And so they're able to hold their own against Zoran, but suffering major losses in the meantime.
Well, they
And
got to stop the bombardment. So once the bombardment started, stopped doing, all the vampires kind of invaded in.
yeah,
They started eating them. So yeah, it's pretty bad.
yeah,
But once Sarah's actually got to that, well, Saris was tearing through a lot of them anyway.
mm-hmm.
But and then she lost. Then she also fell victim to the hallucinations because they went back and you got to get her backstory.
Yeah, the dark
And
part
she lost her arm.
And again,
story.
to me, I feel like the tonal whiplash is still my biggest issue with her. Yes, I understand that. Yes, it's a serious backstory, but it's like having Dr. Slump for most of it, and then, oh, by the way, Aurelie has this terrible backstory where she witnessed rape at the beginning of her.
well, it's not just rape, and I mean tone it down. It's
I mean,
her father's shot, her mother's shot, and then the guy raped the mother.
Her
Which
dead body raped.
doesn't make the tonal whiplash any better. It makes it worse, in my opinion. And I don't know. I just think that's. I think that if they had kept her as more of a serious character and kept the comedic relief a little bit lighter with her, maybe a little bit, but not like her as the comedic relief character, I think it would have hit home better. Like I say, I did not like the storytelling with her.
Okay.
And they could have done a little more to fully. You get the sense because they do spend some time with her and Pip, kind of getting them. They do vibe together. They do become pretty close, but you don't get a lot of that, and so his sacrifice might have played a little stronger with a little more of that. But even so, his story, I think, played out pretty decently.
Yeah, his played out well.
He does a good job rallying the troops for this one last big stand. Even that one dude who ends up surviving that was ready to piss himself and then run away.
I like that his grandfather later on.
What's up?
Like the two weakest members survive.
Pretty much, yeah. But at the end, you didn't get the impression that it was just because they were the weakest ones. Although, and then Pip, of course, he is like bleeding out, he has been horribly wounded. He picks her up and tries to carry her to safety. And it's like, dude, it's like we know where this is going. Like as soon as that started, we were like, we know where this is going. But but it did go there. And I will say this: this was one part where they lingered too long. My brother and I were actually joking. We were like, Zoran is being awfully patient here. Because you have this whole thing of her cradling him and not really, and then you got those two dudes just standing there watching, and Zoran hasn't killed them yet, and it's like, what?
Yeah, but we kind of get the feeling she likes to torture her victim. So I believe she'd be the one to let them watch them suffer for a bit.
I think she would have killed the two of them just for fun.
Yeah, I think she would have at least killed the two lingering soldiers.
Right.
But I think I keep thinking of like Bluto watching Popeye get spinach. But she does become the badass and quickly ends the threat at the at that level. And man, her death is dragging her head across the wall until it is done. Although
here you find out something that I guess is hinted. I don't know, because again, Schrodinger later on becomes integral to the Major's plans on Alucard, but he also shows up in Zoran's brain. And it makes me wonder, was like he kind of sort of injected in each of these?
No, it's he wasn't injected. He could go in there and figure it out.
Everywhere at the same time.
Okay.
So yeah, he just kind of materializes where he wants to go.
Okay. I kind of got that, but I wasn't sure if there was like more of an explanation there. But yeah, he definitely shows up and basically says, "Well, you failed. Screw you."
And I mean, you need to note here that when Ceres got this power boost, she drank Pip's blood.
Yeah.
And Pip is now within her, and it hints to what happens literally the next episode when Alucard reveals, "Oh, all of the victims I've drunk over the years,
the centuries,
aren't out of my control."
Yeah, he's got a few.
Yeah,
but they also
and
they also do eventually hit on an important point, which Alucard probably does not have many that can claim this. That he can claim this, but with Ceres, it was given voluntarily, which they make the point that makes it that much stronger. And yeah, so that who knows how many did with Alucard, you know. Ceres did quote unquote voluntarily, but that was after he shot a big gaping hole in her chest. Yeah. It's like,
well, there's a little choice there. Either you die or you become a vampire.
So now we can get to the Alucard getting in. Though I do feel like Alexander, it's kind of cool to see how Alexander does show up with his squad of badasses and saves, saves Integra. Even though they were told to stand back, he's like, "Nah, screw this."
His the two flanking him were Yumie and Henkel, right? Am I remembering that correctly? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was actually kind of cool to again. Anderson is probably my favorite character in this.
Nun sword girl, and the top guy, the pistol whip guy.
And in truth, though, he's a monster, much like Alucard in a lot of ways.
Well,
he's a regenerator.
He's a regenerator. He's not a monster yet.
Well, monster is
powers derived from God to take care of
not literally, but figuratively. The Catholic Church's monster that they use.
Yeah, he's a monster, definitely.
It's just
well, eventually he becomes a monster because Alucard recognizes him as a monster until he uses that thorn thing to inject.
And it pisses off Alucard because Alucard's like, "No, I wanted to fight you as a man, not as a monster."
So you could die. I guess Alucard wants to die too. I guess everybody, all these vampires would die.
In truth, Anderson would not have been able to take on what was left of Alucard as he was. And Alucard knows this too, but Alucard was hopeful. But it is what it is. I mean, Alucard was probably at his weakest that he was at because most of the people that he had in him were out destroying all the other Nazi vampires.
Well, that's what the Major was saying. He was saying that the only way to really get rid of Alucard was to, reveal the Onion Core, because Alucard had all the other people, shielding him, keeping him away from certain death. But now with all the full release of all his subjects being, spread across town, he's the core Alucard being there is the one you had to kill. Now, for any kind of chance to finally defeat Alucard.
Yeah, and of course, Anderson has that last fight where he's able to use the holy artifact to become a
thorn beam.
Yeah, a thorn demon, and he does do a pretty good job of fighting Alucard.
Yeah, he didn't last very long for such a nice, cool transformation. Alucard takes care of him quicker than he did when he was human.
Well, he said only a human could actually defeat him, and now that he's not a human anymore, he defeated him easily.
Now, don't forget also that Alucard was defeated by some other human. However long it was.
Hey, Alucard warned him. He's like, "Don't use the nails. You're gonna turn yourself into a monster." And he was right. You know, he completely warned him, and wasn't trying to stop him to save himself. Matter of fact, it was easier for him to dispatch him. He was just trying to warn him to, you know, you're not going to be human anymore. You're going to be a monster.
Yeah.
Well, but after that, of course, then you have where it starts to wrap, really, where you have Sarah's Victoria and, well, cat. And the cat, obviously.
Well, the wolf guy, and
yeah,
Wolf guy fight.
It is.
Yeah, the wolf fight was awesome.
And you had the fight between Victoria versus Integra versus the cat versus the Major.
Yeah. And then, of course, you had, and then Alucard ends up facing off with Walter.
Right.
And Walter's main purpose was to get Alucard to suck in all of the blood so that he would, pull in Schrodinger.
Yes.
And eventually...
it's also revealed that the whole setup of why Integra released Alucard was the Nazis' plan. So the entire reason Alucard was released was planned out that Walter would not be there to help Integra during that time of need, that she would have to seek out Alucard's help to unleash him.
Yeah, it was just a remarkable amount of foresight and hopefully, hope to God, luck.
Pretty much, yeah.
So
what was Emperor Palpatine taking care of business because I've foreseen all this to happen. You see that? I hear that over and over again. I have foreseen this.
Yeah, I was like, I'm trying to be a Palpatine.
So what exactly was the reason why Walter hated Alucard so much that he was willing to betray everything? What was the exact
he was a vampire hunter, and basically at some point we never really quite get an answer when, but it was in the 40s. Walter went missing during the World War II at some point, and got turned to go against Alucard, and was promised basically, we'll do something for you. In this case, they brought him back to his youth, but it was sort of a double-edged sword where he was still going to die no matter what soon, because it was basically burning up his lifespan to be young to fight Alucard at his best.
Right.
And
he didn't manage to pull that off, unfortunately.
No.
Well, he did manage to take out somebody at the end as his revenge.
Yeah.
He got to take out the Nazi doctor at the very end.
Yeah, he got a little bit of revenge there, but his original purpose was supposedly to fight Alucard, but it didn't really happen that way. He had a little bit of fight that got brutally beat down, and then he left and confronted the doctor, where he took care of business with the doctor.
I do like that the Major with his aim, and you do show that the Major has the worst aim ever.
Yes.
You can't hit anybody close up either, so no matter what.
It does lead to one of the best near last lines ever, because he has like one line after it, but like when he actually manages to graze Integra's cheek.
Actually,
he goes, something. Oh, I hit something.
Actually, wasn't that the one that took her eye?
Yeah, he took her eye.
Yeah, you're right.
He took her eye, yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I finally hit something.
But, I mean, at that point, once Alucard was defeated, he really didn't intend to continue afterwards.
No, he felt like he won.
He was egging her on because he was yeah, come on, finish it.
They were all trying to die. I mean, again, Schrodinger, the way that he entered Alucard was like cutting his own head off. It was like,
yeah. Well, because he didn't want to hang out either.
Yeah. He cut his own head off. The captain basically gave Sarah every tool she needed to have a more than fair fight.
Schrodinger was the ultimate weapon against Alucard. Basically, because of Schrodinger's ability, he's basically fed himself to Alucard while Alucard brought all the bodies he had back into him. He absorbed Schrodinger into it, which made Alucard basically go insane and be everywhere and nowhere at once for 30 years.
He got better.
He got better. Yes.
He got better.
So, in the end, the Major's plan failed. The Major.
No, it worked. It worked. It worked. He wanted to die.
Yeah.
But also the plan was to get rid of Alucard for
as far as
good.
he knows it worked. But
He didn't stamp out Alucard, and he failed to kill Integra and Ceres, and he failed to completely stamp out Britain. So he didn't fully succeed, but he still.
He thinks he got rid of Alucard.
He did a lot.
Well, he wanted that final. He
dies
final
thinking he
war.
won.
Yeah, he did, and actually, he kept saying it would be a never-ending war. He didn't quite get that either. So
No, he didn't. No, he didn't get the never-ending war. That definitely.
I think, but then you get the end, which rushes all the way to the future, and Ceres is still there, and
30 years in the future, yes.
And Alucard Alucard reforms by basically killing off every
Personality.
I much prefer again going to a bridge. I much prefer him sitting through and having therapy with each and every soul.
Yes.
He does have therapy with over 1 million souls. Yeah.
Yeah, that would take
more
it.
than
That would
30
take. Well, maybe some of them were group sessions.
Especially if it's Freudian therapy, that never ends.
Oh my God, man.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I can't remember.
Well, but it does end, and you get to see. I love how she does talk about the guy's father.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, he fought off all these vampires on his own.
All by himself. I lost an eye to him.
Oh, yes.
Makes a big deal about that fat dude that actually was sat around crying most of the time.
Oh, yeah, it was Penwood's
kinda cool.
grandson or something? It was like,
Yeah, it was Penwood's grandson. Yeah.
That was one of the times where
she brags about him.
that was one of the times where I really liked the comedy. Sometimes to me, the comedy annoyed me when they kept throwing Ceres into it as the butt of a joke. But it landed more home to me whenever they would take a character that you would never expect it from, and then suddenly, like for instance, this where she goes into this, it did get a laugh out of
I will say. Okay, I was going to kind of wait till we got to the production values, but we're close enough to the end. I'm going to go ahead and say this. I am not a fan. I am not a fan of how they went into full-on omake, looks like they dashed it together in 10-minute style art for the comedy scenes.
That's how it is in the manga.
I do not like that.
I hated it.
Is
Manga.
Brandon kept talking about tonal whiplash.
Yeah.
Like this is beyond tonal whiplash.
I agree. It was so
the
horrible.
spirit of those guns.
Yeah. Well, now I remember in the original series they did that at the end, like for the next episode preview, and usually it was Ceres being harassed by the spirit of her guns, and that worked better. Here it's just randomly inserted.
Well, I have to say, Jacob, it's not only is it in the manga, but there's a reason for it being in the manga and like that. In a lot of manga, if you have something really dark, really bloody, they're going to be like, lighten it up.
Yeah. Well, a lot of shows do that. And Full Metal does that a lot. Full Metal does the Chibiform scenes a lot. But even the most Chibiform scenes usually don't look as crap as some of these scenes did. And so I think maybe if they weren't as badly drawn And if they weren't as incredibly strong in the tonal whiplash, like I said, the worst scenes, like the part where Saris leads the tour in front of the of Alucard and Anderson, so they don't fight, that played off nicely. But then when you have scenes where you're in the middle of this really, really, really serious,
what about the scene of Alucard going insane on the ship?
What's that?
Where what about the scene of Alucard thinking he's going insane on the ship and he thinks he's talking to Hollywood celebrities?
Yeah, that was weird. And it drug on a little too
He's talking
long.
to his own gun.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of amusing, but it was kind of weird, and that was one of the ones I was of mixed feelings about. But like, and that last one we were just talking about, of like that final scene. Where they're trying to brush up young Penguin and make him not as nervous about his, that
your grandfather, blah, blah, blah. That was horrible.
It had its purpose and it served its purpose well. I just, again, the tonal whiplash was too strong for me.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we go into production value? To me, and again, I'm not an animation expert, but I will say that as far as, but I am somebody who likes to watch anime.
Right.
And as somebody who watches anime, I can say how much I enjoyed the animation. For that, I will say that I did not like the animation going all over the place in some ways. There were times where I felt like the animation looked horrid.
Yeah.
And there were times that I thought the animation looked spectacular. And
again, part of that was the studios.
And it could, I mean, the studios changing is one of the big factors.
Because I think that what's the name of the one that did like the last 3 episodes? I can't remember off.
Wouldn't that be?
But it was.
Madhouse.
I know Madhouse did the first 4. I think
they did the middle portion.
Graphinica, I think, did the last 3.
Well, there were
Graphinica, in particular. I think the first 7 or so episodes, most of the CG I was fine with. I thought it was pretty good. The CG in the last 3 episodes was hideous. It was just awful. I did not like how they used it.
I need to show you some CG anime right now.
What's that?
From these days. I need to show you some CGI anime from this season right now. That puts this series to beautification, honestly.
Well, I don't like a lot of the CG applied to a lot of anime for the most part, but there's sometimes where it works and sometimes where it doesn't. Fireworks was a good example of a movie where the CG did not work at all.
Yeah, the story was really weak on
well, some of it did, but most of it didn't.
But this one, I could tell there was a lot of times where they were trying to cut as many corners they could for money preservation, which is a usual style, I know, but I felt like it was a lot more obvious to me in this series than it was elsewhere.
Especially since these were OVAs made over about a 6-year period of a very popular series. You would have thought they could have had the bank to keep it top-notch throughout. You would thought,
you would
at
think,
least.
but you never know. I mean, that's the problem.
I can say they were struggling. I do know the history of this series as it was coming out towards the end. They were struggling for budget. That was part of the reason why the delays was they were struggling to get the budget out for them to do it. So yeah, it's popular, but at the same time, because it took 6 years and it was released over 6 years, a lot of people weren't jumping to get the video or the DVDs all at once to bring in the money.
Well, that's the problem when you extend it that long.
Yeah.
Yeah, if only Gillian could have learned that lesson.
But yet there were parts closer to the end during that the mansion attack where you could tell that it must have taken tons of money to animate all the explosions, all the action. When they did the initial invasion of London, that looked like it cost a freaking fortune to animate.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. And that was like during the not the dead center, but I'd say the last quarter.
No, that was about the center.
It's
or
like I say,
a little bit after.
It's hard
Yeah,
to
about yeah.
the series.
Yeah. Because I think the sequence with the mansion, that was around episodes 5 and 6, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or
No, it's about 6 and 7.
6 and 7, yeah.
So I mean, again,
Yeah.
but again, that's kind of almost a whiplash in itself too when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But only if you're watching it. But I feel like only if you were watching it all at once. I guess if you watched it as intended, where you'd watch the one part done by one studio, then wait a few years, then watch the next part with the next studio, then wait a few years.
That's what they intended, but
well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was intended that way.
Well,
at least we got the whole thing. You know,
I liked all
animated.
I liked all the animation except for, like I said, like what Jacob mentioned, that other shirt was just crappy as hell, and I can't stand that. But the rest of it, I liked the CGI and everything. I enjoyed it. I don't usually have issues with CGI, except for Green Lantern. But
I'm gonna call out something I've called out before. Colors, use of colors in the series.
Oh yeah.
It is very notable because the Catholics, especially Anderson, is draped in blue and cooler colors, and you have, of course, Alucard in his red almost all the time, and you eventually get Ceres into the red once she eventually takes in blood. She takes on her red uniform.
Yeah.
Instead of the brown uniform she has, sort of being humanized colors.
It is interesting early on. It is interesting early on that Schrodinger shows up in an outfit that almost matches hers, and it's like very close.
Yeah, she Schrodinger looks a lot like her, except she has the Nazi, and of course she has the ears and stuff. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, one thing I gotta give this one over the other series is the coloring of it, because the other series, I mean, from what I've read, it was like one of those early attempts at digital coloring, and it looked
very muddy. Very muddy.
It did look very muddy.
Is.
I mean, animation-wise, I felt like there was a lot of consistency. I did like the animation in the original series.
Oh, it had a very distinct animation look.
Yeah.
But coloring-wise, definitely.
Oh, yeah. And that's one thing I want to mention: character design. I know this was supposed to be more in line with the manga. From what I hear, it is. But like, if you look at this image that we have here on the screen, particularly the picture of Ceres, I mean, that's a look you only rarely saw on her in the course of the series. And it looks downright deranged. But like, almost all of the characters, I feel like, but definitely Alucard, the Major, you saw this with Walter, especially after his turncoat. Zorin, some of these characters, and then especially Henkel, after her mouth gets blown off, it just turns into this ghastly Glasgow grin. But like this idea of these really big, crazy-looking rictus grins on the character. That's over and over and over again, and
I can say that because the creator of this did another manga, which became another anime series called Drifters.
Yeah.
And you can see the same look in it. It's sort of his look that he put his characters through. Yeah. It's also almost as bloody, and the villain in that one is Jesus Christ. So,
why am I not surprised?
What series was that?
Drifters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've heard of this actually.
I think I actually.
But this one, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but they did it so much, and it was like, but just generally the lines are more angular. The darker characters look like Alucard looks more evil in this one. He looked more cool in the other one. You know what I mean? Like,
well, he rarely took off his glasses in the other one. You rarely saw his eyes.
Right.
There was a little shadow effect, but I like that too. But
the shadows were cool.
You see it a lot more with Anderson in this one, but so you still get to see the glasses effect with Anderson.
Yes, the reflecting glasses. That was another thing that was like an obsession in this show.
Well,
but that was also the series
most
too.
of the major characters wore glasses. Most of the main characters wore glasses.
Yeah.
Other than Sarah's, because she was like innocent, she didn't have the eyeglass look because she was innocent, and
the ones that didn't. Yeah, Sarah's got a couple of those glowing eye moments, and Maxwell definitely had some glowing eye moments, but definitely all the ones with glasses. Yeah, yes. And one thing, I don't know how we haven't mentioned this yet. But one thing that has to be mentioned once, at least, and it's one of the reasons why I wonder what Catholics and Southerners would think of this series, where the Vatican soldiers, did they remind us of anything?
Jacob, I ask you to watch that episode unabridged, because not only do they bring it up, they have a wonderful character named Jed Forrest. And he brought him some good old boys from South Carolina.
Right. Yes, they went full on clan with that. That was wow.
That's okay. They didn't want the Catholic Church to be looked at as anything but evil.
And the funny irony of that is that the clan hated the Catholics.
Well, no, I mean, it's the joke, though. I mean, it's the joke. But
in this case, they wanted to make the Catholics look like a bunch of really cool evil people.
Well, see, also, here's the thing. It's our idea of those hoods existed in only the Southern Territory, only in the Klan. Thing is, it existed before then. There was a reason why the Klan wore the white hood.
Right.
And the Catholics had the white hoods beforehand. So it makes sense to do it. It's the same reason why you do have. That's why it's kind of why the swastika was chosen by the Nazis.
That's true.
And it's that concept. You know, these things do exist elsewhere. They've done it. They've existed elsewhere. Only our perception of view of it is a bit different. I mean, for heck, I mean, Bleach is back, and we still have the swastika sword, even though it's on Disney.
Okay.
I mean, I've got that sword sitting up. I've got a copy of it right over here.
Yeah, I did like the colors in this particular anime. I did notice that the animation was all over the place. Like sometimes it was blotchy at times, and sometimes it was cool in its design. But I haven't seen the last 3 episodes, so I can't say regard to the CGI. But I imagine that there is nowadays CGI that they just don't give a,
Well, I mean, I never can give Japanese anime credit for CGI. I'm going to give it credit on this one. You guys kind of being harsh on it, in my opinion, because I've seen some shit anime with 3D. And I'm talking like, I just watched one last night that came out this season that had a dragon. I was like, that thing is the worst CGI I've seen this entire year's lineup.
Hey, catch
and it comes from the same studio from one of the series I absolutely obliterated before for the same problem. Their CGI sucks in Japan.
I mean,
and they at least did decent.
It does depend.
Because actually, even Ghibli showed me that they still didn't have 100% of a grip on the full CGI.
Yeah, the earwig thing.
With God, what was that? What was the movie?
Ronya.
Earwig.
Ronya did show me that too. Yes.
The the earwig.
Earwig. I mean, even when you also compare that to the Lupin movie that they did to CG.
Yeah.
Now that was beautiful when they did that. So again, I guess it just depends on the studio, like anything else. I mean,
it does, but you need to have a decent CGI concept, and Japan really does not do well with CGI. They have a few good ones, but I mean, they could use to learn from America
I feel
on
like
CGI.
CGI is used to cut corners
Yeah.
in Japan.
It is.
The
It
issue.
is.
Well, it's just like the army of Alucard's like souls. That really felt like a cost-cutting measure, and it just didn't work. Imagine if they'd gone old school and animated that. How glorious
That would be difficult as hell, Jacob.
I know.
I hate drawing a crowd scene.
I know. Yes, that would have been a huge expense, but it would have looked so much better. but the show does use CG in moments where it fits perfectly. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and I feel like the earlier episodes used it much better than those later episodes. But yeah, there were moments throughout where it was kind of like, yeah, that was kind of obvious.
So music. Let's move on to music so we can wrap things.
Okay.
You guys kind of touched on it, in my opinion. It was not good this time around. The first show was good.
Yeah.
They love popular music.
Some of the choices for enders were good, and I thought most of them were appropriate to the episode, but they just weren't great. They weren't like...
when the abridged version does a better job with the music, I hate to say it, I mean, that music sucked. The abridged music, they at least did the right music for the right tones. They did stuff like War, What Is It Good For When the Nazi Invade? You choose appropriate music. You don't choose this sort of poppy...
Where's the Ride of the Valkyrites?
Exactly. You can. That's public domain. I don't know why they didn't use that one.
They didn't have that stuff in the rest of the ring cycle stuff. And so we don't have any of that stuff. It was all silent, just explosions and blood splatters and
or synthetic pop music, and it just didn't work.
No,
in my opinion.
The music in the show was kind of abysmal. I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm.
I did like the art, but the music part was left to be desired. So the original series did a way better job with the.
I like the song at the end, but
probably fast forward anyways.
Right.
Well, yeah, I will say that the original series, if anything, even if the ending theme was good, but I still to this day, if I think Hellsing, I can hear that opener in my and see the opening
I got both CDs currently loaded in my car CD player from the original. I do not have a copy of Ultimate's music at all.
But that's the thing, though. It's such an earworm, that original opener,
right?
And but I think that's the mark of a good opener, is that even people who aren't as into it will sit there, and if they hear it the first time, they're like, "Oh, I want to hear it again," and
do it again.
In fact, kind of a quick segue into the reason why I watched this series in English versus the dub, versus the sub, is all because of Alexander the Paladin.
It was fun hearing him with a Scotch accent.
That's awesome. I give you that the clown that did the Japanese voice was the same guy that did the Emperor and
Norio Wakamoto, who normally does some great stuff.
Yeah, but this is dragging out his vowels and just like vomit.
It is notable. He was recast. It is notable that the original Seras, Fumiko Orikasa, and the original Alucard, I think, was Joji Nakata, and the original Integra was Yoshiko Sakakibara. They all came back. But again, I didn't actually get to watch the Japanese version yet. I actually did watch the English version. And,
I gotta say this.
Crispin Freeman.
Anytime I watch a series in dub that takes place in England or America, it's better in my opinion, because you can't hear the dialect in Japanese of an Englishman. You can't hear that Scottish dialect in Japanese.
Yeah.
You hear it in English. You hear it
here.
It was the original reason why I like the Heroic Legend of Arizon in dub, because it had all the English voices from a,
And Crispin Freeman did a great job as
Crispin
Alucard.
Freeman is great as Alucard, who
Oh,
theoretically
this is-
could have any accent you really wanted him to.
I mean,
you got Gildart Jackson is the Major, K.T. Gray is Ceres, Stephen Brand is Anderson, Victoria Harwood is Integra. And Ceres, they gave her kind of a Cockney accent. Anderson was Scottish. Integra was like the Queen's British. And then the Major had that broad German accent that works really well.
Germanish kind of thing. I don't know if they actually found Germans to do it. But I wish they kind of found Germans, actual German-speaking English people. With English more lines to it. It would have been a lot more interesting hearing this Germish stuff.
6 of the 8 dub voices are all from Critical Role. Also, they're just randomly through there, with the exception of Lauren Bailey, who played Schrodinger in the dub.
And you had Yuri Lowenthal was Pip, and again, I felt like he was doing his best Gambit impression.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
He was always trying to be French.
Yuri was okay. I think Yuri was kind of the more one because it's trying to be French, but it kind of came out a little, that Gambit French
It has sounds like
concept.
Occasion.
Yeah, a little bit of Cajun in there.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate they went to that length to try to do it. They tried to do it. They, the Germanish was all that great, but at least they gave it. They gave it a good shot. I can tell that these guys are Germans. These guys are evil. The French dude Pip was at least trying to make him sound French. You didn't get that in the Japanese. They're all speaking Japanese.
How does the Scottish come through in Japanese? How do you?
I don't know how you do that.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I don't speak Japanese.
It's sort of the reason. It's sort of the reason why, if I'm watching anything that occurs in America or England, like Baccano occurs in America in the 1920s. I'm not going to listen to that in Japanese, even though they have a great Japanese group, actors in that series. It's far better to hear the Bronx accent come out,
You got a good point there. Yeah, I miss it.
Now that having been said, again, I do look forward to eventually watching the Japanese, because what I remember is that George Nakata sounded great as Alucard.
Oh God, there's nobody else that can play Alucard than the guy the Japanese guy that does Alucard. He has a very deep, gravelly voice that can pitch up when he was really angry up. But the English guy was all right, But this, like I said, the only reason why I even watched this because I really had a hard time with the Japanese, the guy that did the Alexander, Alexander the Paladin. It sounded like a screecher. But
Well, you could have had the original voice actor of Goku playing him.
Well,
oh God!
I think the original voice with Alexander from the original OVA, I would have been fine with the Japanese one, I guess. But I still kind of would like to have seen here the Catholic, the Irish Catholic dude screaming his head off and laughing like a crazy individual like he is. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we? Because it's starting to get late. Why don't we go ahead and why don't we go with favorite? I'm not sure. Favorite scene seems a bit much for this.
How about favorite Dracula? Not just in this series, but in everywhere. Favorite version of Dracula.
All right, favorite version of Dracula. Favorite plot point in this series. We'll say that. Favorite one of those,
definitely the German invasion of Britain.
And favorite character in this series.
It's kind of a little harder, but it'll be Alexander Paladin. Alexander the Paladin was easily my favorite character in the group.
So who's your favorite Dracula, Roger?
I mean, compared this to the Alucard to all the other vampires, I don't have much of an opinion upon that. But I do I don't know. Maybe I'll choose Alucard from Symphony of the Night as to be the one that have to be my favorite vampire one.
All right. And what's your favorite story arc in this?
My favorite story arc is easily the invasion of Britain. It's the cream of the crop, and it takes the greatest amount of part of the storyline. The whole purpose, the whole thing anyway. So yeah, is the Invasion of Britain is my favorite arc in the whole thing.
Well, so what about you, Kroll? Who's your favorite Dracula? Who did it best?
The original Universal Dracula.
Bela Lugosi.
Bela Lugosi. Yeah, that's my favorite. Right. And as far as plotline, actually, I like Anderson as an enemy. And then every time he fought Dracula, you know, it was always interesting. Like the first time I saw him, it looked like he had lightsabers, and I was like, "Why the hell do the bad guys have lightsabers?" Because the way that he was showing his swords, it just kind of looked like lightsabers to me.
Well, that would be even more impressive.
Yeah, but and they were white, so you kind of think of good, not evil. I mean, I guess the Catholic Church thinks of themselves as good, but you know, I don't.
So do you think Alexander would be Anderson would be a Jedi or a Sith?
Oh, totally a Sith. Totally a Sith. That's what I'm saying. They were bad guys. in my
one badass Jedi throwing multiple lightsabers at one time.
Yeah.
What? And what was your favorite story arc?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Just the Anderson in general, the whole, you know, the church trying to wipe them out, even though they had a pact with them, and you know, just the backstabbing bastards that they are.
Well, actually, and Kroll, tell us a little bit about yourself, and I'll get to Roger right after.
Well, I watch TV, I watch movies. Wasn't into anime much at all. More recently, I'm starting to get into some and enjoying some.
We're trying.
Yeah. It's a work in progress. I mean, I always loved Full Metal Alchemist. I saw that, and it wasn't the first one I saw. Definitely one I loved the most. But I just see like heavy metal, and I saw a few other ones back in the day. So, but all of the like I said, that stuff that, you know, Jacob mentioned, like that, like I've seen that, and every time I see it, I just cringe and want to turn it off whenever I'm watching. Usually, I just can't stand that, and I can't stand the way the girls scream, and it's so annoying. It's like fingernails on the chalkboard to me. So, but I'm enjoying some of this anime. You know, I always loved cartoons, so it's not like I don't like animation. It's just the way a lot of anime did it is what I didn't like. But
until we get to letter B,
it's definitely it's definitely a lot more adult than even the adult cartoons.
We can show you some serious adult ones.
Oh,
Bible Black. There we go. There's some adult ones.
I saw the original Street Fighter 2 Japanese version, so I've definitely seen some, you know, more adult. So that's pretty much X-rated. That one. I never really watched a lot of hentai. I've seen a little bit, but yeah. So
that's one that's like
anyways,
on a Nick or something. That was really that's really over the top.
I come on the show, you know, with you guys sometimes, and I come on Tuesday nights. It might be Monday nights coming up, and Sunday days with Dave, and talk about movies. And I love talking about movies. I love talking about TV shows. I love talking anything I watch. I love talking about too with other people. So it's really fun being included in these podcasts. Never had my own, or never had any YouTube. Kind of scoffed at it before, but it's funny now I'm on it. I still don't watch it as much as I am on it, so it's funny. But yeah, I love to read also and play video games. So that's me.
Yeah, we also need to do the original Gundam movie trilogy one of these days. Roger, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Roger. I've been collecting anime for more than 30 years. I've been watching anime for a long time. I also head up a small Facebook group called Animazing Collection Company. We specialize in large-scale anime, figure, and manga collecting, geekdom in general for Japanese games and such like that. Of course, it's my pleasure to join SeptumSin and Kotobukijake and everybody else here because now I only come around once a month versus trying to do it all with all the films. I was definitely enjoying my time here during the anime event.
Yep, I pollute your page every week with my pickups and the upcoming released manga and anime.
Oh, great! I love that part. Do more, as much as you want. Give it to us, please.
So let's see. So Brittany, who did it best? Who's the best Dracula?
Best Dracula, I have to give to Billy and Mandy Dracula, because Dracula don't suck, he scrape and lick. That is by far always going to be stuck in my head from that series. Best version of Dracula, in my opinion, by far.
Best character for Hellsing?
Best character in this and Hellsing, I've got to give it to, in my opinion, actually Integra. She's very stiff and ladylike, but at the same time, she's a badass when she needs to be. So we kind of skipped over when she has to take over and take on zombies on her own before Anderson appears. She's doing it fairly well as just a normal person with a sword. So,
your favorite story arc?
I'm just going to go with the favorite scene. There is one particular scene we didn't cover, which is kind of regretful because it's one of the most powerful scenes, and that is the Major's speech about war.
It's almost like that Symphony of the Night. What is a man?
Exactly. It's that same concept. So
I do want to clarify
like,
one thing. My favorite character is actually Ceres. I like Anderson as a villain, but I like Ceres, except when she was being the real part of the joke and being stupid. But other than that, I like her character.
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Embryo Arts. I do art. I've done videos. Unfortunately, we're on halt from doing any videos while we're trying to deal with life situations stuff. We are doing art, but a lot of it is by hand drawing because I do not have digital function right now to be up and running. But we are working on a new series. We announced it before we stopped streaming last month. And we are working on a new series, comic series, to be coming out hopefully next year. The only thing holding off on that is getting the housing situation set up. So, yeah.
Well, I like that penguin character. That's a pretty cool thing.
Oh, yeah. Great. A couple of mascot characters coming out in this new series.
Let's see here. So, Dave, who did it best? Who was the greatest vampire, Dracula vampire of the world?
That's a toughie because one of the greatest was Nosferatu, the original. I always loved the shadows with him, but if I had to go with with two others, I would have to say, actually. Yeah, I do like Van Helsing's Dracula. I do like Christopher Lee's Dracula. I do like Dracula 2000's Dracula. And I do like Dracula Untold's Dracula. So it's like...
Dracula Untold was a really good one.
It's hard to pick just one.
You don't like Bela Lugosi?
Even Leslie Nielsen as a Dracula is pretty good.
Yeah.
And Blackula. I mean, you can't knock Blackula.
Oh, sure. I've got to watch Stan Helsing this before. Stan Helsing, best movie ever.
And there's so many imitation ones, but in any case, favorite scene. Anything when they show like the slow motion gun action, those are some favorite scenes. but I do have to agree with Roger that that Germany invades Britain scene is pretty good.
How about your favorite character in Hellsing so far?
Favorite character is Alucard.
He is cool. How do you think he would fare against all those other Draculas?
I think he would probably survive them all.
He'd probably kill all of them. I mean, he's way over the top more than any of them are.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Dave.
I run Inside. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, which is a podcast that has been on line for the last 5 years. Love getting together and shooting the shit about various films of different levels. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we also podcast on. I podcast on there with Crow and my fiance and Forrest. But I also put up some video pickups and video reviews from time to time. And I do have something exciting to share. I am putting together my first anthology called and shout out to Kroll because he came up with the title. It's called Tales of the Forgotten. So,
good deal.
Not sure exactly when it's going to go out. At this current time, I'm at an hour and 40 minutes without like all the extra stuff in it. So we'll see how long this thing is going to be.
Wait until Jake and I submit our short film.
Right.
Well, plus Joe Sherlock said that he may put something in, and I'm waiting on a couple of other short films to actually.
Yeah, I got a couple coming up too.
Yep, we got some short films that I'm going to film with Kroll too, to try to see how to do it and whatnot. I've got some ideas up my sleeve, and hopefully we can put something pretty cool together.
You get enough of them together, you could make 2 films.
True.
But
Anthology 1 and 2.
But why don't we go to you, Jake? So who did it best? Best Dracula.
That is kind of hard to call. I do feel that we haven't really given any love to like the original Dracula, the Bram Stoker's Dracula. And I do like his presentation. I like the Gary Oldman's performance in that film, but also the original version of the book was pretty good. It was like just solid. But I do like Alucard. I think he is a fun version of Dracula, and he would probably take my number 1 spot if I really had to rank them. Yeah.
How about what was your favorite story arc in this one?
I mean, there really weren't that many arcs. I mean, most of it was the invasion of Britain, really. But in terms of like favorite story beats or what have you, even though I think it was somewhat ham-handed in the way it was executed and could have been brought up a little better, I did like the moment where Ceres finally embraces her nature and becomes a badass. I did like that. And Thorin was such a bitch. I love what happened to her. And I gotta say, just for shits and giggles, if I was speaking in the role of a certain character I used to play in One Piece, I would have to agree with Dave about all those fetishistic gunshots. But for me personally, not as much. But
so who's your favorite character?
Character is a hard one to say. I think
Schrodinger?
Schrodinger amuses me. I like Schrodinger, but he would not be my favorite. It's probably a toss-up between... It's probably a toss-up between Alucard and Saris, honestly.
Yeah.
Although Anderson and the Major are contenders. They are very... Like, the Major would not be a favorite.
I don't really like
He
Major.
is fun. Like, it's kind of like the Joker is not a favorite, but...
He's my favorite. He's my
very
favorite
notable
DC villain.
So, well, if so, is there anything? I mean, we hopefully, if y'all are on our channel, you know what's going on there.
Yeah.
But is there anything that's not related to our channel that you got going on that you want to throw out?
I mean, you know, the usual. If you are one of our regular viewers, you probably know the basic gist of it. In addition to this channel, I do work quite a bit and do have a native plant nursery, RV Homegrown Natives, that I've helped co-create, and we're in our second year this year. And I also do try to get some viewing in so that I can join these fine folks for these discussions, but also on movies Galore and Delusions of Grandeur. I guest on those frequently, and there you have it.
So, of course,
I want to say though, and if anyone else has any others they want to throw out, best line. There is a best line in this series, and that's when the Major says, "Oh, I finally hit something."
Oh no! Again, the war speech.
Yeah.
So, my favorite Dracula, even though it's not identified as Dracula, I believe in my heart that he is Dracula, and that is Neonpire.
The umpire specifically was bitten by a vampire.
But you see,
he is son of Dracula.
He's son of Dracula. There you go. He's secretly Dracula inside.
We need an American release of Neonpire. Yes.
But as far as my favorite, Alexander Anderson is probably my favorite character. I don't consider him a villain in the slightest. He is just an antagonist for Alucard. Matter of fact, it shows...
He's just misguided.
He shows he's actually more of a heroic character in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But he believes in what he's doing, and he even goes against his masters in order to do good.
He recognizes that Maxwell is corrupt and is no longer following God's teachings.
Well, Maxwell, he didn't use his silver.
And Darth Vader's a good guy too.
Yeah, he did not. He wanted to. He had it. He wanted to use it.
But that original scene where, though I think the original anime did it better, the original scene where he confronts Anderson is probably one of my favorite scenes in the entire series for both. Though, like I said, I do prefer it in the original because they extended a little bit more, but it is still a really cool scene. I like it because it's the first time Alucard is actually stopped for a moment. And with the inhibitors on him, he actually did meet near his near equal, which was kind of cool.
No.
So, and I guess that's it. Of course, for all of you out there, as this is airing on Halloween, I hope you all have a lovely Halloween night. And don't talk to too many ghouls, goblins, or ghosts.
And enjoy all that candy.
Good night.
Don't let the night.
Good night.